this is Pacific Drive, and that is the Olympic Exclusion Zone. Pacific Drive is a post-apocalyptic driving game that leads you on a dangerous journey where all you have is a crappy old station wagon. What is the story of this game and how is it? Well, I'll tell you everything soon. But first, let's talk about how this zone was even created. Oh wait, I need my reading glasses. The year is 1947. The United States government, together with researcher Dr. Ophelia Turner, her husband Alan, and colleagues Francis Cook and Tobias Barlow, have started developing revolutionary tech in the Olympic Peninsula. It is called limb tech, but it didn't come without its flaws. Limb technology experimentation led to mysterious phenomena and disappearances in the region, which prompted the creation of ARDA, an organization full of secrets. They established the Olympic Exclusion Zone in order to secretly research the phenomena, referred to as Anomalies. Due to the creation of ARDA, Oppie and her beloved limb tech faded from public interest. Despite ARDA's attempts of keeping the zone safe, instability kept getting worse and worse, with one certain event being nearly catastrophic. On September 14th, 1961, Alan, together with Dr. James Kay, were running experiments at a research facility in the Red Meadow. At 4 in the morning, something went wrong, and their experiments unleashed a gamma-ray surge. This caused something called a mass hallucination, where for 30 seconds everybody in a 10-mile radius saw terrifying hallucinations. Alan immediately tried stopping the surge, but all his attempts failed. Dr. K ordered him to get to safety, but Alan didn't listen. He flipped the radiation polarity, making the gamma-ray energy collapse into itself. This saved everybody in the zone, but it took Alan's life. After the mass hallucination, the zone kept expanding, until the year of 1987, when ARDA evacuated everybody and sealed the zone, so no one could find out what happened behind these walls. But some people didn't leave. Oppie, Francis and Tobias stayed in the zone in order to find more info about the mysteries of all the anomalies that were caused by the US government's mess-ups. All of this leads us to 1998, when you, the driver, have some papers in your hand that seem to be important. You drive to the zone's walls, where you have to take a detour through a forest. But something weird happens. You, together with the car, get sucked into the outer zone by a mysterious bright light. You find yourself in weird green stuff, which is the radiation in the zone. Your car is in pieces and nowhere to be seen, but after going through some undergrowth, the driver finds a shed, and in that shed is a still operational station wagon. The driver walks up to it and is contacted by Tobias and Francis, who lead the driver to a garage owned by Oppie. She reluctantly allows you to use the garage and agrees to help. The trio, mainly Tobias and Francis, explain to the driver that the car might be a remnant, an anomaly that takes the form of inanimate objects and forms a psychic link with the host, gradually causing them to get obsessed with the object to the point of insanity. To confirm this, Oppie gives the driver an arc device, an invention that can teleport the driver back to the garage in case of an emergency. She suggests the only way to test the car's origins is to take it to a massive anomaly called Colossal Cappy and drive into it, as that would give the arc device enough energy to give an answer to Oppie. The test goes well, with the driver being sucked back at the last second. But this caused something unbelievable: the mass hallucination. The remnant reacting with Cappy had for mere seconds redone the event, allowing the trio to conclude that the waveform from the event is equal and opposite to the remnants, and that it originated from the deep zone. The trio believes that if the driver goes to the origin of the mass hallucination, they could cancel the remnant's effects on the driver. To find out the exact location of the waveform, the driver is tasked by Francis and Tobias to investigate 3 anomalies called the murals. Paintings drawn by Laura Cesari, a scientist who went mad due to a paint bucket remnant and drew the visions she saw in the mass hallucination. At the same time, Oppie asks you to go to the research facility where Alan died. Once you get there, you find a secret room with a huge ball-shaped thing in the middle. After searching through some lab data, Tobias and Oppie find where the hallucination came from. The well. This is where remnants were created, in Dr. K's lab. The well was a source of massive gamma-ray energy. Arda wanted to control it, and so Alan and Kay made the remnants to trigger the well. After this discovery, the team decides to continue to the deep zone, but its power grid is disabled, making entry impossible. Tobias comes up with an idea to reroute their own power to the deep zone, and so you make your way towards the old wall. You speed through each crossing with the conductors giving your car energy, which opens the crossings. But in the middle of all of it, the mid-zone battery farms run out of energy. But the last crossing won't open without them. Tobias runs out to repair them, but this would turn out to be a suicide mission.
I'm at the battery farm. The fuse box is liquefied, but I can bypass it. Almost ready.
Please don't do this!
Well, what do you know? One time, I tried myself out at things to say. Bobby, take care of him for me. Francis, I love you forever.
He sacrifices his life so you, the driver, can continue. Now that you have a way to the well, Francis and Oppie start making a plan. In order to not kill the driver, their idea is to use Alan's suppression method in order to halt the well's gamma rays for some time. In the well, the driver will have to perfectly time a gateway in order to escape, otherwise they won't come back. Oppie gives you a mod that overrides the Arc device's limiter, so it can overpower the well's energy and open a gateway. To get enough energy for such task, the driver has to go to an old anomaly barricade. Once you get that energy, you return to the garage for one last time. And so, the end of the road begins. The driver slowly approaches the massive well. It looks ominous and terrifying. Driving towards it, you truly realize how big this place is. Eventually, the driver enters this massive place. But then, you find yourself in a mysterious hall full of TVs, where you hear past conversations between Alan, Oppie, Francis and Tobias. The actual Oppie and Francis tell you time is running out, and that you have to leave. You find your car on a mysterious road, and you make your escape. After escaping to the gateway, you reach the garage, but the car stayed. Francis and Oppie tell you that you're free from the remnant, but the car's link to you has maintained. Now that their journey of saving the driver was over, Oppie decides to leave the zone, making Francis and the driver the last people in the zone. The end. Phew, that was quite a lot, huh? But that's not all. You might be wondering, but how is the game itself? Well, let's talk about it. On the surface, the gameplay is quite simple. There are 3 main objectives in Pacific Drive: scavenge, craft and build. But in reality, there are like 10 more objectives somewhere between those 3. The game pretty much divides into 2 separate parts, the zone and the garage. In the zone, there are actually 3 separate zones. They are the outer zone, which is the safest and most stable of them all, the mid zone, as the name says, it's right in the middle, and the deep zone, which is simply put absolutely bonkers. Your task in these zones is to drive the car around the world, scavenge for parts, grab anchors, which I'll talk about soon, and to keep the car in good condition. Now, let's unravel the scavenging aspect of Pacific Drive. In the Exclusion Zone, you can gather materials from almost anything. You can get the scrap, rubber, plastic and so on from cars by breaking the panels and doors with the scrapper. And a lot of materials can also be gathered from buildings like houses and these white research containers. Now, you might be wondering, what is this scrapper you were talking about? Well, there are a bunch of tools that can be crafted in the garage, with the main ones being the scrapper, handbag and impact hammer. These are essential for collecting materials. For example, a scrapper is great for literally scrapping things like car parts. Handbags are useful for quickly gathering items into your inventory or to collect materials like marsh eggs and swamp coral, which are found in the mid-zone. And impact hammers are for opening locked doors and collecting certain rocks like thermosep crystals and Olympium veins. There are also other tools like flashlights, lanterns and pry bars, but these aren't as important. Now, remember how I mentioned things called anchors? Well, anchors are these ball-shaped things that can be put into the arc device to basically fuel it. These anchors allow the arc device to open something called a gateway, which I've already mentioned by the way. It's basically a huge and kind of ominous laser from the skies, but it's actually a portal which teleports you back home. But wait, before we teleport back to the garage, I feel I should explain the zones in more detail. Something I really like is that each zone has its own biomes. The outer zone has the blistering woods and damp forest. The mid zone has the mires and scorch. And the deep zone has the red spires and smokestacks. Each biome is different from each other, from their looks to specific materials that can be harvested from them. For example, marsh eggs and swamp corals are most common in the mires, since there is lots of water there, which I've noticed makes them more common, I guess. But thermosep and tree candy can be found in the scorch. Yes, they may be in the mires too, but I've noticed it's a lot harder to find them. The deep zone is by far the weirdest though, because of its looks and the anomalies that reside in there. Probably the most important material in the deep zone is Olympium fragment. It is found in Olympium veins, which looks like a purple rock. I'm pretty sure I've got enough materials now, so let's go back to the garage. And that leads us to the garage, which may just be the most important part of Pacific Drive. In here we have a bunch of things, but let's start with the most important one, the workbench. The workbench is where you make everything necessary for a long journey. For example, the sealing, mechanic and electrician's kits. These are crucial for any expedition in the zone, as you never know when a spark plug might short or when a tire might go flat. Probably the most important things in the workbench are the tools, which we talked about already, and the doors, panels and bumpers. Without these, you honestly won't last long. If you tried doing that with the top-down achievement, you know how bad it actually is. There's a bunch of different panels and things like Olympium, anti-corrosive and lead-plated. There are also upgrades that you can get, but for that we need to move on to the fabrication station. This is where the magic happens. In the fabrication station, you can upgrade everything from the garage to the car itself. All of these upgrades require anchors, so I recommend getting as many as you can on your journeys outside. Now, for the garage, we have upgrades like a repair stop, which is super useful as you don't have to pull out a repair putty or blowtorch every single time you come from a trip to the zone. You can also make a bunch of lockers, upgrade the antenna on the garage, and add new stations or upgrade ones you have. For the car itself, you can upgrade storage with things like larger trunk storage, roof storage, and side storage. You can also upgrade battery and fuel capacity. For example, with fuel tanks and batteries that can be attached on the back seats of the car or ones that go on the roof, which are easily the best in terms of capacity. There are also gadgets that help get energy via natural resources, those being a wind turbine, hydro generator, lightning rod, and solar panel. The lightning rod is my favorite, as it seems to remove the damage from electric anomalies, but maybe that's because I have better armor. Anyways, my favorite car upgrades have to be the auto parker, limb pulse emitter, powered bumper, and limb chipped engine. The auto parker is quite self-explanatory. It parks by itself. Now the limb pulse emitter is by far the best. It has saved me from dozens of bunnies, abductors, and various other anomalies that attack the car. The powered bumper, in my opinion, is a must, as it is super durable and can handle most crashes. And finally, the limb chipped engine is something I would not want to replace. After I upgraded to this, the car just goes. It isn't slow like the engine you start with, and is much more reliable, as I've only had maybe 2 malfunctions on it. Some other upgrades that I like are the Duke Jet and Ion Shield. Simply put, the Duke Jet is a mini jet engine that instantaneously throws the car left or right, depending on where it's set up. It is a good tool to avoid anomalies that may attack you. And the Ion Shield, well, it's just a bubble that protects you and the car from radiation. But let's say you are on a drive in the zone, and suddenly when you park your car, the passenger door opens. Or maybe, when you turn the wipers on, your speedometer starts acting like a wiper as well. Or most annoying of them all, when you go fast, your radio changes channels. These are called quirks. They are funny, annoying, or downright horrible combinations of when you do a certain thing, another thing happens. To give it a better example, I've thought I'd read you some messed up quirks. I had when going downhill steering inverts. I learned downhill was a very nebulous concept. Car goes fast, doors detach. How is that even possible? Car catches air, random wheels fall off. Car goes fast, hood opens. Had to take a break after that one. After aborting a run, I got 2 quirks which together made the car unbearable. If the headlights were off, the horn would sound, making the wipers go off. Great fun having to choose between a drained battery and your sanity, lol. Took me longer than I'd like to admit to figure out as well. Now, you might be wondering, how the hell do you get rid of these? Well, for that we have the Tinker Station. It's basically an old diagnostic computer, where if you know what quirk you have, for example, when your wipers go fast, your car battery drains. Then you just put it in the computer as when this, then this. Simple, right? And it really is. If you know what quirks you have, of course. Lastly, we have some garage upgrades that aren't as important, but still useful. For example, the Matter Deconstructor. I mainly use it when I need to replace a broken car part, as it's quicker than a scrapper. Then there's the Outfitting Station, where you can basically make armor for yourself. For cosmetic purposes, there's the Detailing Station and Paint Shelf. In the Detailing Station, you can add all sorts of decorations in and outside the car which you acquire from anywhere in the zone. For example, I always have Tobias's favorite cryptid on my dash. It's kind of to show respect, as he's my favorite character. As for the paint shelf, there you can store liveries and paint. These are great for changing up the look of your car, and can take this station wagon from boring and bland to hip and fancy, even menacing. Some other things in the garage include the map. That's kind of important to, actually go to the zone. That's pretty much it. The garage is essential to upgrade your car, to make it more comfortable, and to also make it like you want. This bit is just an excuse to talk more about the anomalies, but in a way they are very important. I mean, imagine if they weren't in the game. It would just be Pacific Drive on peaceful mode. As I've already told you, anomalies are weird things that started popping up when limb tech was being developed, and some of them are quite mysterious. In my opinion, the scariest ones have to be the tourists and meteorite squall. Tourists are mannequins that work like weeping angels. When you turn your back, they move, and it's terrifying. And meteorite squall is genuinely one of the scariest things ever. It's a meteorite shower, but the meteorites are pretty much massive skyscrapers falling from the sky, making this eerie sound when they fall. It's absolutely terrifying. There are also good anomalies like happy hairs that heal your car, and pacemakers that charge your car. The last thing I'd like to mention is the soundtrack of Pacific Drive. It is a bit short with only 26 songs, but the songs they do have are amazing. It's just nice listening to the soundtrack while in the garage or on a drive. Honestly, I don't know any other game where the soundtrack is so good that I actually would listen to the music outside the game. My favorites from Pacific Drive's soundtrack are Puzzle Pieces, The Freeze, Holy Mystery, Cadillac Dust and Dr. Juice. Listening to them just makes me feel like I'm in that old station wagon. They're that good. Oh, and by the way, most of this video has the soundtrack in the background. Well, after all that talking, I guess it's time to give my own opinion on Pacific Drive. First, I think its gameplay style is similar to Subnautica, Stalker and the Metro series. The way you have to scavenge for food or materials, survive in a post-apocalyptic world and avoid creatures you have never seen is exactly like those three games. And that's probably why I like Pacific Drive so much. I have plenty of hours in Subnautica and the Metro series because something about the mystery of these games and their worlds just intrigues me. The same is with Pacific Drive, because if I think about it, when you start, you don't know what's in the zone, you don't know what the anomalies are or do, and you don't even know what Arda or Lim is. Now, doesn't that sound familiar? In Subnautica, you land on a mysterious island, full of mysterious animals, and you have no clue what happened to your ship. In Metro, you don't know the exact reasons the world is in ruins, you don't know the monsters, and you don't even know if anybody else outside Russia is alive. That's one reason I like Pacific Drive. It's similar to games that are my all-time favorites. Another reason is that it's just a nice, casual game. Even though I've finished the game, I really like to just drive around, get a little bit of loot and listen to the radio. It's quite a chill game if I do say so myself. I also think the story is great. The way they implemented the silent character thing is great in my opinion. By saying,
They don't have a transmitter. We won't hear a thing back.
I like how they tell you stories on your journeys. It just makes you understand the zone a bit more. The only thing I don't like is the ending. Like, bro, it feels like a mobile game. The TV scene is fine, but what the hell is the gateway scene? Like, seriously, there are so many better ways to end a game this good. Despite that, it's still a great game. If I had to give a rating on it, I'd give it a 10 out of 10. I don't even care about the bad ending or other stupid bugs that I have had. It's just way too good to give anything less. It's the most unique car game I've ever seen. Yes, there are other post-apocalyptic car games, but the only one I know is Earn to Die, and that is not even close to Pacific Drive. Well, just like Pacific Drive, I'm bad at endings, so thanks for watching and we'll see you soon.